Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we will break down question 12, which was a short response theory question from the Queensland External Exam for Economics in 2023. We're going to use a similar structure that's been used in other short answer questions on my Breadonomics channel here. Step 1, know your question. Know your cognitive verb, know your topic, and know your targets. Step 2, know your theory. And finally, apply your knowledge of the theory to the question as it's presented to you. Don't go off track. The question that was presented in question 12 was worth 4 marks. Assume the graph represents a recent event experienced by the Australian economy that required economic management. Explain a likely cause and effect of the event. Okay, so we're looking here, there's an economic management component. Down the bottom we can see our cog verb, and then we're being asked to look at the cause and the effect of the event. So the first thing we have to do is have a bit of a think about what does this event look like. What we see here is a shift of our short-run aggregate supply from SRAS 1 to 2. We started in our economy at position A, an equilibrium of our long-run aggregate supply, short-run and aggregate demand, otherwise known as full employment, designated by the FE down the bottom here. Our economy is working at maximum capacity. Something's happened in the economy and there has been a decrease in the short-run aggregate supply. There's been a decrease in supply in the economy, the easiest way to look at it. Our new position is now B. As the aggregate supply has shifted to the left, price level has risen from P1 to P2, and real GDP has fallen from full employment to a position of less than full employment, YFE to Y2. Now the challenge is that this model isn't the one that appears in the Queensland textbook, nor in the Victorian textbook that I often use. This model is called the neo-classical model of ADAS. And it's one that the QCAA have included in their exams over the years, but it's not one that appears in our normal sources of information. The Reserve Bank do use it, and so that's why it's important to know this model as well. The one that we tend to see more often in our resources is what's called the Keynesian model. And it basically tells us the same thing. As aggregate supply shifts to the left, in this regard, price level's risen and GDP has fallen. And we can then make some inferences about the nature of unemployment and things like that also from that reduction in GDPR. Where the neoclassical model is good is that it means you can highlight this little section here, which is the gap between the operation of the economy versus its position relative, or its operation of the economy relative to what could be considered full employment or maximum output of the economy. And you can make some inferences about that, whether we're working at maximum capacity or not. The key thing to note here, everyone, is that you should make sure that you're comfortable with both models of aggregate demand and supply. If not, spend some time with your teacher breaking them down. History tells us that the QCAA tends to use this one, but textbooks tend to use the Keynesian. So this is a real challenge for us. Let's break down the question. What is happening? We're seeing a decrease in SRAS from SRAS 1 to 2. Consequently, as we see that decrease in SRAS, we see PL rise, price level rise. PL increases P1 to P2. And also, income goes from YFE and it falls to Y2. So that's what's happening. You'll notice that I've been very, very clear in using the annotations as they're presented on the diagram in front of me. Very important to be clear on that. Okay, don't make up your own annotations, use the ones that are presented to you. How does this happen? This tends to happen in economics through what we'd refer to as supply shocks. Supply shocks are events where we see a significant shift in the short-run aggregate supply. For instance, during COVID gave us a lot of supply shocks. During COVID, e.g., During COVID, building materials increased in cost. Okay, during COVID, building materials increased in cost. Gas from the Ukraine-Russia war, gas into Europe increased in cost. They shut down pipelines from Russia into Western Europe. Less gas going into the country means that prices tend to rise. But we're looking here at this whole idea of a decrease in supply. For some reason. They tend to be fairly major events. In the 1970s, we had an oil crisis. What's critical to think about here is the effects of this. And the question asks you to say, what's the short-term effect? The first thing I'd be thinking about here is this problem we have now, what I'd call stagflation, where prices are up and unemployment is likely rising as well. As we move from a position of full employment to a position below full employment, we'd infer that unemployment's rising. It's not clear, there's no data available, but we can use this modelling to make some inferences. So then I can start to say, well, I've now talked about my macroeconomic objectives, the effects on those. I can then look at it and say, well, what's the household position on this? Households are going to see a drop in income. They're going to be affected from this rise in unemployment. Firms are going to see a drop in, drop in consumption from households. And government are going to see a reduction in tax and an increase in transfer payments, government payments. Increase in unemployment leads to automatically an increase in welfare payments. So what I've tried to do here is break down what's going on, what's going on from the model itself, what's caused it, and I've had to make some kind of decisions and inferences around that. But once I understand what's happening, I can always talk through to these effects here, both on my macro objectives of price level and unemployment, and also to my stakeholders. Now let's see how I went compared to the result. Sorry about my markings over the top here, but first thing is accurately describes the graph as a short-run aggregate supply shift or decrease. We've clearly done that. Explains a likely supply-side cause that leads to inflation. Okay, I'm not sure on that. Let's read the exemplar. A cyclone in North Queensland damaging a season of bananas. Now, whether that would show up in our macro data is in dispute, but it's still an example. Okay, building material costs, gas supply, things like that, but anything that's reduced to a decrease in supply. But I've done that. I've talked about a likely cause. I've looked at the short-term effect on prices. We see the prices rise from P1 to P2, and we see the fall in employment. And I can then think about a relevant causal event. Well, I've actually here given an option of maybe looking at 4 or 5, so I've definitely done that. Pause it there, have a read through the exemplar, check what you think, and then move on. Okay, to wrap up today, short answer theory questions. Step 1, know your question. Identify the cognitive verb. In this case, it was explain. Okay, the target here we were looking at being very clear on was making sure we could think about cause and effect. And the topic was around short-run aggregate supply. So know your theory and especially your models. And apply your knowledge of theory to the question. We had to look at this question from the perspective of supply change and to a more granular degree, thinking about it in terms of issues like stagflation. Okay, I hope this helped. We'll start working through some of the more juicy analyse and evaluate questions from the 2023 exam in coming videos. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.